The apartment always sounded different after midnight. During the day it was a place of harmless noise, the kettle clicking off, the muted thud of shoes by the door, the faint hum of traffic filtered through glass and height. At night, however, it became a chamber of echoes. Every sound lingered too long, as if unwilling to fade without being acknowledged. Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the refrigerator's soft groan and the next passing car. Beside him, Anna slept on her side, facing away. Her breathing was steady, practiced. He knew that rhythm well. He had learned it over 12 years of marriage, but lately it felt rehearsed, as if even sleep required a performance. He did not yet know about the affair. Not in the way people imagine knowing. No lipstick on collars, no incriminating messages flashing on an unlocked phone, no whispered confessions thick with tears. What Daniel knew instead were fragments, irregularities, tiny errors in a system that had once been precise. Anna had always been punctual, now she was not. She had always hated the smell of cigarettes. Now she sometimes returned home carrying a faint trace of smoke. She had always told him when she would be late. Now she told him after. None of it proved anything. Each detail could be explained, and Daniel explained them, to himself carefully, generously. He had loved her too long to do otherwise. Still, something had shifted. Anna lay awake too, though Daniel didn't know it. Her eyes were open, fixed on the darkness, her thoughts moving in circles she could no longer control. She remembered the first time she noticed the emptiness. It had not arrived dramatically. There was no single moment she could point to and say, "This is when it broke." Instead, it seeped in slowly, like cold through a poorly sealed window. She would sit at the kitchen table across from Daniel, listening to him talk about work, nodding at the right moments, smiling when expected, and feel absolutely nothing. Not boredom, not anger. Nothing. That terrified her more than any argument could have. She tried to fix it the ways people are told to fix things. She bought new clothes. She changed her hair. She suggested trips, dinners, conversations about the future. Daniel responded warmly, earnestly, always willing. That somehow made it worse. His love was constant, reliable, unyielding. It did not ask anything of her. The affair did. Mark entered her life without ceremony. He worked in the same building, 2 floors down. They shared an elevator for weeks before exchanging more than polite nods. He noticed her first. She was sure of that. The way his gaze lingered half a second too long, the way he remembered her name without being reminded. Their first conversation was about nothing at all. That was the point. With Mark, Anna did not have to be a wife, or a future, or a history. She was simply a woman, present and desired. When he touched her arm while laughing at something she said, the contact sent a sharp, electric clarity through her body. She felt awake. She told herself it would go no further. Then she told herself it would end soon. Then she stopped telling herself anything at all. Daniel noticed the changes not as a husband might, but as an analyst would. He had built his career on pattern recognition, on identifying deviations in complex systems. He could not turn that instinct off at home, no matter how hard he tried. He noticed Anna's phone never left her side anymore, not even to shower. He noticed how she angled the screen away from him when she scrolled, how her smiles sometimes arrived without context and vanished the moment he entered the room. One evening as they ate dinner, Daniel asked casually, "How work?" Anna paused for half a second too long. "Fine," she said, "busy." Daniel nodded, filed the pause away, and asked about the sauce. He did not confront her, not because he was afraid of the answer, but because he understood something essential. Truth, when rushed, tends to escape. Instead, he watched. He began waking earlier, just to observe the morning routines. He noted the days she dressed with more care, the days she wore perfume she never wore for him. He memorized the rhythm of her lies, not the words but the timing. Anna, for her part, felt his attention as a weight she could not name. Daniel was kind, affectionate, present. That, too, had changed. He listened more closely now, asked fewer questions but better ones. Sometimes she would catch him watching her with an expression she could not interpret, not suspicion, not anger, but something colder. Calculation, perhaps. The affair deepened. Mark was everything Daniel was not, or so it seemed to Anna in her increasingly divided mind. Where Daniel was measured, Mark was impulsive. Where Daniel analyzed, Mark reacted. He spoke of escape, of possibility, of lives unlived. "You're not trapped," Mark told her once, his voice low, confident. "You just think you are." Anna wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that her choices were acts of courage rather than betrayal, that she was reaching for happiness, not running from responsibility. In the quiet moments, rare, unwelcome, she wondered if emptiness could ever truly be filled or only temporarily distracted. Daniel discovered the truth on a Tuesday afternoon, in the most unremarkable way imaginable. Anna had left her laptop open on the dining table. That alone meant nothing, but a notification blinked briefly in the corner of the screen before disappearing. "Can't stop thinking about last night." Daniel did not touch the computer. He did not reread the message, did not search for context, did not scroll. He didn't need to. The sentence was enough. In that moment, something inside him clicked into place. He felt no surge of anger, no heartbreak, no cinematic collapse to his knees. Instead, he experienced clarity, clean, sharp, almost welcome. The system had revealed its flaw. That evening he kissed Anna on the cheek as usual, asked about her day, complimented her cooking. He laughed at the right moments. When they went to bed, he wrapped an arm around her waist and breathed in her scent, unfamiliar and unmistakable. Anna stiffened just slightly. Daniel noticed. He lay awake long after she fell asleep, no longer counting seconds but constructing sequences. He did not yet know what he would do, only that whatever came next would be deliberate. Psychological truths fascinated him. He understood that people often punish themselves more effectively than others ever could. All that was required was the right environment, the right mirrors. Over the following weeks, Daniel became a version of himself Anna had never known. He was attentive in new ways, asking her about her thoughts rather than her schedule. He began sharing doubts, vulnerabilities he had never voiced before. He spoke about fears of aging, of stagnation, of missed chances. Anna listened, guilt blooming like a bruise beneath her ribs. Mark, by contrast, grew restless. He wanted more time, more certainty, more proof that Anna was serious. His charm began to crack at the edges, impatience leaking through. Daniel watched the tension build without interfering. He began leaving subtle traces of knowledge, never enough to accuse, always enough to unsettle. A comment here about trust, a story there about a colleague whose marriage collapsed after a secret affair. Anna laughed these off, but they followed her into silence. She started sleeping poorly. She dreamed of locked rooms and endless corridors. She woke with the sensation of being observed, even when Daniel was already gone for work. One night, unable to bear it any longer, she asked him, "Are you happy?" Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. "I'm interested," he said. "In what?" "In seeing where things laid." The words stayed with her long after the conversation ended. Anna began to realize that the danger was no longer discovery. It was anticipation. Something was unfolding, slowly and inevitably, and she had the growing, suffocating sense that she was no longer the one guiding it. And Daniel, lying beside her in the dark once more, listened to her breathing change, just enough to tell him she was awake, afraid, and beginning to understand. Anna's fear did not arrive all at once. It accumulated. At first it was merely discomfort, a sense of imbalance she could not explain. Daniel's calm had changed texture. Where it once felt reassuring, it now felt deliberate, purposeful, like a hand resting near a switch. She tried to convince herself she was projecting. Guilt had a way of distorting perception. When you lied often enough, even honesty began to sound like a trap. Still, the feeling persisted. Daniel no longer asked where she was going when she left the apartment. He no longer checked the time when she came home late. Instead, he would simply look up from whatever he was doing and smile. "Did you have a good evening?" he'd ask. Always that phrasing. Not long, not busy, good. Anna found herself answering too quickly, filling the silence with unnecessary details, then hating herself for it. Daniel listened with an attentiveness that bordered on intimacy. He did not interrupt, did not challenge. He absorbed every word. She began to sense that each sentence she spoke was being weighed, measured, and stored. Mark noticed the change in her almost immediately. "You're distracted," he said one afternoon as they sat in his car, parked on a quiet street several blocks from her office. "You're not really here." "I am," Anna replied too sharply. "I'm just tired." "Tired of what?" he pressed. She didn't answer. Mark's patience, once effortless, had grown thin. What had begun as an escape now demanded maintenance. He spoke openly about leaving his job, about moving somewhere else. He asked questions that required answers she did not have. "Does he suspect anything?" Mark asked one night. "No," Anna said. Then after a pause added, "I don't think so." The truth was more complicated. Daniel had not accused her, but suspicion was no longer the threat. Something worse had replaced it. Awareness. Daniel, meanwhile, refined his approach. He understood that confrontation would only collapse the structure too quickly. A confession would grant Anna the relief of honesty, the illusion of closure. He would not offer her that mercy. Instead, he adjusted the emotional climate of their marriage. He became open in ways that were unsettling. He spoke of trust as something fragile, almost sacred. He mentioned casually how betrayal fascinated him, not as an act but as a process. "People think it's about sex," he said once over dinner, "but it's really about narrative control, who gets to define reality." Anna's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Is that so?" she asked, forcing a smile. Daniel met her gaze calmly. "I think so." The nights grew heavier. Silence stretched longer. Anna found herself watching Daniel when he thought she wasn't looking, searching his face for cracks. There were none. The realization came to her slowly, in pieces she resisted assembling. Daniel knew. Not suspected, not wondered. Knew. The certainty settled in her chest like a stone. She considered confessing. The impulse rose suddenly, urgently, like the need to surface for air. If she told him now, perhaps she could still steer the outcome. Perhaps honesty would diffuse whatever tension had begun coiling between them. But something stopped her. Daniel did not feel like a man waiting for answers. He felt like a man waiting for time. The breaking point arrived on an ordinary evening. They were sitting on the couch, the television murmuring in the background. Anna's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Mark's name flashed on the screen. She reached for it instinctively. Daniel was faster. He picked up the phone and glanced at the screen, his expression unchanged. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "That's Mark," Anna said, her voice thin, "from work." "I know," Daniel replied. The word landed softly, precisely. Anna's heart began to race. "You know." Daniel set the phone down carefully, as though it were something fragile. "I've known for a while," he said. She waited for anger, for accusation, for the eruption she had imagined and feared. It did not come. "How long?" she whispered. Daniel leaned back, folding his hands. "Long enough." The calmness of his voice terrified her more than shouting ever could have. "Why didn't you say anything?" she asked. Daniel studied her face, as if seeing it clearly for the first time. "Because I wanted to understand," he said, "and because I wanted you to understand." "Understand what?" "What it feels like," he replied, "to slowly realize that the story you're living is not the one you think it is." Anna felt tears burn behind her eyes. "I was going to tell you." Daniel smiled faintly. "Eventually, perhaps." Silence settled between them, dense and suffocating. "You're not angry," Anna said, confused. "Oh, I am," Daniel answered. "But anger is a blunt instrument. I prefer precision." The following days were worse than any imagined confrontation. Daniel did not ask her to leave. He did not demand explanations. He did not even mention Mark again. Instead, he dismantled her sense of certainty piece by piece. He began inviting friends over unexpectedly, recounting shared memories that emphasized loyalty and trust. He spoke warmly of their marriage, of the life they had built, always with Anna present, always with a tone that suggested complete confidence. She felt trapped in a performance she could no longer sustain. At work, Mark grew increasingly frustrated. "You told me he didn't know," he said accusingly after she canceled yet another meeting. "Now you barely answer my messages." "He knows," Anna admitted finally. Mark went silent. Then we should stop." The words struck her harder than she expected. "That's it?" she asked. "What did you expect?" he replied. "I'm not interested in playing games with a husband who's watching." In that moment, Anna saw the affair clearly for what it was. Not a lifeline, not an escape, but a temporary illusion that dissolved the moment it was exposed to reality. She was alone. At home, Daniel had begun packing boxes. "What are you doing?" Anna asked one evening, panic creeping into her voice. "Organizing," he said simply. "For what?" "For what comes next." She stood in the doorway, watching him label a box with her name. "You're leaving me," she said. Daniel looked up. "No," he replied, "I'm leaving space." "For who?" "For you," he said gently, "to see yourself without me cushioning the fall." The final confrontation came a week later. Daniel asked Anna to sit with him at the kitchen table, the same table where they had shared countless ordinary moments. "I've filed for divorce," he said calmly. The words felt unreal, abstract. "You can't just," Anna began. "I can," Daniel interrupted, "and I have." She stared at him, tears streaming freely now. "Is this your revenge?" Daniel considered the question. "No," he said, "this is the consequence." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, evidence of financial arrangements, timelines, decisions already made. Everything was meticulous, final. "You knew," Anna whispered again. "Yes." "And you waited." "Yes." "Why?" Daniel met her gaze, his expression neither cruel nor kind. "Because I wanted you to feel the weight of every choice you made," he said. "Not all at once, but gradually, the way I did." Anna collapsed into sobs, the full magnitude of her actions crashing down around her. The affair was gone. Mark was gone. The marriage she had taken for granted was irreversibly broken. Daniel stood, gathering the folder. "I hope you find what you were looking for," he said quietly. "But you won't find it in other people. You'll find it in the silence that follows." He left the apartment that night. Anna remained at the table long after the door closed, surrounded by the ruins of a life she had assumed would always wait for her. In the end, there was no dramatic punishment, no public humiliation, no raised voices. Only absence, and the unbearable clarity of knowing that some betrayals do not destroy you immediately, but reshape the rest of your life around the hollow they leave behind.